we're going to be doing a superhero landing shot. Since it's a superhero landing shot, we're going to want to have the superhero character flying in from the sky at like a trajectory from over here maybe, and then he lands on the ground. So it's like a zoom, pow, right? So first things first, I don't have a clean plate of this specific shot, but let's go ahead and create one real quick. And we're going to do that just by outputting essentially a track mat for us to be able to work with. I'm probably going to freeze frame this specific spot right here. This frame, he's crouched all the way down. I think right there we should be good. And if we set that to our current frame for our frame hold, that's just going to hold it there for us for a clean plate. We're not asking for an entire image sequence, but now if we input that PNG file that we just output and then we tag that as that same color output, sRGB. Now, with this being said, we need to go into Photoshop and we're going to start working on the actual cleanup for this shot. But firstly, let's create the clean plate frame that's going to line up with everything. And we can do that pretty quickly just by using the lasso tool. And I'm using Photoshop Beta because I don't like updating my softwares. Now, my concern is that it's actually painting out a little too much back there. So let's make this a little bit tighter to what we want. But yeah, as you can see, that does like a really clean job. I mean, it adds like one extra crack here that we might not necessarily want. But yeah, okay, so I'm thinking this for our clean plate is already what we want. So let's go ahead and export this. So we're going to export it as a PNG as well. Something to look out for is that we do want this to be 16-bit. So we're just going to output that PNG. And you'll notice here in a second, I'm going to output this to our matte painting. And then we'll call this matte painting. And then I'm going to call this clean because this will be our matte painting clean plate. Okay. So now if we go over to our photo over here, essentially we need to input this clean plate that we had. Okay. And if we tag this correctly now as our output and then sRGB. Now for our clean plate that we have, we actually already have the freeze frame that's happening and we have him being removed. And as you can see, that does like a really nice job. And what we're going to need now is just a simple merge node. And we're going to paint out specifically the section in which he exists. So yeah, now we just need to take this roto that we did here and I want to feather it outwards. Now my only concern that I'm going to have actually is that the photo that we did, just feather it all the way out. I want the original plate to be denoised. And we're going to take this denoise analysis and let's move this over to this gray wall back here. Probably should have done this before we sent it to the matte painting. We're going to just increase the denoise amount all the way. And now everything should be denoised. I'm just going to copy paste that denoise over to our other plate. And then we can regrain everything afterwards. And that way we can do all of our work. Now, with that being said, we're going to need to create a second visual effects plate. And that's going to be the set extension version of it. The reason I didn't do this all in one photo was because lining this up later for the clean plate would have been somewhat of a nuisance. So I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. So let's go ahead and increase the canvas size here. I want to lock everything to the bottom right hand side. We're going to anchor the photo to the bottom right hand side. And if I increase the width here to, let's just say 2500, and then we're going to do the height to about 4000. Let's actually change the height here to 3000, and then we're going to change the width to 3500. Again, we're going to be locking that bottom right hand corner. We just use our rectangle tool here. We will select our photo, and then if we go up to select and hit inverse, then it will select everything else outside of the photo, the selection that we just created. Now we're just going to hit generate fill. And honestly, just right out of the gate, that's like not bad. I think we're going to go here with this last option for the photo here. And the only thing we really have to worry about now is this white Toyota Corolla that it kind of really just goofed up here. You'll notice that as you zoom in, you're going to see that there's a lot of flaws with the AI as well. But let's just say white Toyota car. So we're going to export this as another PNG. I'm going to call this matte painting out. And then instead of clean, I'm going to call this extension. And we're going to try to match this to the bottom corner of our frame here. I think the other thing we could do is that currently, if we set this to, let's try actually removing this transform. And let's go ahead and just view where this transform is at real quick. If we change the center axis here to this bottom right hand corner, which I believe the value is like the 3500 and 0. If we just type in those numbers, that's going to line up our center of our transform to the bottom right-hand corner of our entire image. So I just basically changed the center X and the center Y values of this transform to place the transform controller at the bottom right-hand corner of our screen. And what that's going to get us to do, though, now is that if I go view my my reformat node, let's see what kind of options we have here. This centers the photo, and if I don't center it and I click uncenter, it's going to take that bottom right-hand corner and then place it in our bottom right-hand corner. And now, if we go look at between this photo and our clean plate, everything should line up perfectly. Now this is tagged incorrectly, but we'll just do that. So now we have this. The only difference is this car wheel back here, and that's okay because we used AI and AI screwed it up. Well, this actually might be a problem of our original plate. The original plate on this particular shot has the banding in it, and I'm guessing that's because when it was uploaded to Action VFX, they outputted it as 709 themselves. In which case, this wouldn't be a problem. But I'm still going to do this correct because assuming that the visual effects plate was given to you correctly in the first place, then we want to be able to have the same correct workflow for how we would do that. So, with that being said, we have our set extension here. Let's grab this first frame and move that to there. The other thing, let's add in a little bit of motion blur because, again, while the movement speed is important, the motion blur also kind of dictates how much we're really seeing while that's happening. Let's scale everything in by just a little bit more. Just trying to make kind of like this pop that's going to happen here. Yeah, that's feeling a lot better. I do think like there needs to be some general camera shake that happens afterwards because otherwise it just feels a little kind of stagnant. But yeah, this will be the movement of the camera flying down. My concern is that we just did this transform. I suppose we'll have to figure this out because the next thing we need to do basically is import our visual effects matte. So I already created a matte from out of DaVinci Resolve, and it's just a black and white photo of our dude here, and we just need to isolate his specific layer. So let's tag this as 709 because I know that's what I tagged it as. We need this denoised footage here of our guy, but we only want him, and that way we can isolate the layers and then place him over top of everything else. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I have this mask that we have, and then if I go tag the change the RGBA alpha to like a red or something like that, because this is just a black and white JPEG sequence, this will isolate just him. So now I'll show you what that looks like. We just have him isolated on his own layer here. And I need him to basically be able to fly in and then hit the ground when we need him to. So our ground hitting moment that we have is at roughly frame 1023, I think is the frame in which that happens. So here we have frame 1023. Yeah, that makes sense. Now I'm going to use an O-flow node, and this is just going to allow us to time remap everything. So frame 1023, let's change this from output speed to frame number. And we're going to just change this to frame 1023. And we'll set that as a keyframe. And then, of course, also, if we just go to the end of our sequence, it's 1083. I'm just going to set that to 1083. Because we want him to be moving at the speed in which he's moving there. But between this frame and, let's say, 1021, I want him to be a completely different position. So that way, over the course of a couple frames, he basically just jumps down pretty quickly. I might change this to be a little bit earlier. And let's see, at frame 1000, let's go back to our node graph here. Let's have him, I kind of want him still outstretched a little bit. So that way he does have some movement as he's going through the air. And that's just going to retime it to like what we need it to be. Because we're starting here at frame 1011. And I'm even thinking after 1023, he's going to hit the ground pretty quickly. Yeah, until 1030. Just make that a couple frames. So now he's really hitting that ground at the speed in which we need him to. And of course, at 1023, we want him to be hitting the ground. So let's add in a transform node now. And I'm going to just change the X value of this and the Y value of this to kind of put him in the center of his chest here. This will make it a little bit easier for us to rotate him around and have it where we want him to be. So let's do 981 and 428. And then now what this gives us the ability to do is just rotate him around where we need him. So I'm going to set the keyframe here for 1023. And then let's go back a few frames to like 1020. And let's just rotate him around. Actually, this is where I probably need this to be closer to the top of his body, so 983 and 602. And let's go ahead and just rotate that around as he's flying in. Now let's take this and we're going to merge this on top of our reformat node. And let's see, this right here needs auto alpha selected. And then of course, let's take this and also make auto alpha selected. And let's take our transform node here. We're going to take this guy and we're going to scale everything up by 0.1 because that we already have to for our scene. And then right now we're just going to probably set a keyframe here. Set keyframes actually when he hits the ground. And let's see, let's have this guy go further up. And we're just going to kind of like animate him to be where we need him to be. I'm going to enable motion blur as well. I'm actually thinking we're going to want this before the, let's do it this way. Because we're going to want the same camera movement to be on him as well. This actually probably will be easier this way. Let's place this merge node here. And now we need to figure out what the difference in the transform scaling size is between this guy and that. So let's scale this up. I'm going to say no animation on all curves. In 1023, let's zero out a lot of this stuff and then zero the rotation. Basically, I need to find that spot where he exists. And let's just go ahead and set keyframes for everything. And then now a few frames before, we can start to rotate our guy and also move him up. And I'm thinking all the way to here, right? And at this point, let's see, we're still gonna do something like that, I think. So if we go back to our original plate or our shot now, this is going to have everything running back. So let's play on the reformat node. I think his trajectory doesn't make sense because he feels like he should be going higher. Let's fix that. Yeah, I think that should fix it. Him kind of coming down to about right here. And then we'll fix it with adding in some explosions and stuff. Okay, so let's scale him up now to get him about the right size that we need him to be. And then overall, let's just use another transform node, honestly, to get him where we need him. I'm going to disable our O flow for right now because that's going to cause some problems. But an easy way for us to do this actually is if we just go to like a later frame and using our transform node that we have here, just plugging that into our original visual effects plate, this will give us the correct scaling of everything to our reformat, I think. So now we need this transform node just to, well, we'll just do it all over here. Let's scale them up slightly. We do have, let's find it real quick. We do have that reference photo, which I ended up deleting earlier, but this reference photo is the same exact size as our other photo that we have here. And we're gonna just use this as our reference for the scaling of him. So if I go ahead and just replace this, but if we go ahead and scale this down, we will see our blue outline, but we will also see our double of where our guy is supposed to go. So let's go ahead and erase that. We need to take our current dude and scale him up slightly. Then let's see, let's add another transform node in here. And this is where we went crazy last time. Yep, and it did the same thing again this time. Let's remove that. I have to restart Nuke again. I think the O flow is the thing that's screwing it up. The only way I think I can fix this is by rendering out another EXR sequence, which let's just do that for the sake of my sanity here. Because we need to move him and get like all of the stuff. Let's use a right node here with our O flow. And then, yeah, you have the same problem with O flow. It's one of those frustrating things. I really like O flow, but, you know, it does make things annoying sometimes. So now if I delete O flow and we just move all this up, okay, I think that scaling should work for me. Now I just need the X position of this to be correct. By the way, I'm holding shift, and for whatever reason that fixed that bug. It's pretty close. Let's change the scaling here to less. I think now it's just the animation time is different. And so that's going to line up over our thing. Let's go ahead and now just not use our reference photo. And this is just going to be over the original shot here. The thing we're going to want to do, though, is go back to the original visual effects plate, I think, at this point. Because we're going to want the shadows to come in on the appropriate time. We want his contact shadows to be there. Also, anytime we're going to have any issues with like artifacting or anything like that, we basically only want to use the set extension for the areas in which is a set extension, and then we want to use the original visual effect shot in all the other areas. And we can kind of do that. We already have our clean plate here that we can feed in over top of anything. Essentially what we want to do is we have our original shot, okay? This everything, we know that this bottom right hand corner is the same as our bottom right hand corner of our visual effect shot here. And so if I take a merge node, for instance, and then I just place this over top of this, we'll see that it kind of freaks out because it's not the correct scaling or anything like that. But if we just like use a transform node, it'll just pop it onto our scene. If we do the transform node and then set this to 1920 by 0, that's going to set our hex value down here to 0. This is now placing this in whatever it understands the right hand side of our image to be. Let's see if we can get this to be decently close to what we want, what this number is. Yeah, that number doesn't really make sense to anything, but what we could do is we just zoom in here. But I think that's going to allow us to do is we're going to notice that the everything kind of lines up pretty perfectly. The only difference is the denoise amount, which we are going to want to do on the rest of our sequence here. So we're just going to denoise everything. But we are going to get a hard line here, and that's because the AI is not perfect with where it lines things up. It kind of changes the bleed as it's going into it. All we need to do to fix that is after our merge node here, let's actually do another merge node, and we're just going to essentially crop out the areas in which we want the original footage to be and the areas in which we want it to be alpha. And let's go view that real quick. We already know that we're having a problem with this car, so let's go ahead and just kind of create a roto here, and I'm just going to kind of create a roto around the top as well. Now if I just pre-multiply this and we blur it, I'm going to fix our mask that we created here. That should work. And now if we go ahead and merge that on top, now we'll notice that we're not having as many problems, if not at all, because we have already blurred into the areas in which we know we want for our shot. And we need now the clean plate to animate back in the shot of him kind of like turning around and looking around and such, because now all we need to do is have this merge node here of this guy turn off at some point and have it turn on to the original plate, and then that way we are, and that's going to probably happen on frame 1023 because that's the frame in which he lands. But yeah, we'll notice that if we turn this off and then we turned this off, we actually get him in the exact same spot, and that's kind of what we want here. Let's go ahead and have this animate in here at 1025, and also this frame hold, we're going to want to kind of get rid of that at frame 1025 as well. I'm going to use a merge node to do that actually, and we'll have one merge node that kind of controls everything is what I'm thinking. Let's just call this control alpha. And this control alpha merge node here, we're going to control a bunch of different merges just with this one. So for this merge 6 here, we're just going to say add expression, and we're going to say control alpha, because that's what we named our merge node down here. We're going to call this control alpha dot mix, and it's just going to find that mixed value. And you'll notice that a green expression linking has been connected to it. And we need to do that for basically everything going forward. So we have our clean plate here that we have. We're going to also want that expression. So all we have to do is go hit edit expression, copy this, okay? And then now we're going to go into our merge 2 here. And we're going to add expression, and we're going to say mix. We're going to go down here all the way to our guy here that was on the alpha. We're going to set a add expression, and we're going to say control alpha mix. And that's going to control all 3 of these mix nodes through this one control node here. And we can see that by me just changing this value allows us to get our other guy. Just through one switch, it changes everything to what we need. That being said, though, let's find the moment that we want here. Let's say set keyframe, and let's go to 1024, and we're going to set that to 0. Have him go down just a little bit more. Start in a little bit closer. So that way we're always tracking something. So now we have to add in like all of the dust and cracks and everything getting blown up as he hits the ground. Go ahead and clean that up. Okay, great. So now we're going to get into the area in which we will be adding in all of our smoke and dust and all that stuff. Now, a part of that wish list kind of like folder that I created all of this stuff here in which we will be using some of these assets. Okay, great. Now we want to use our shadow and our beauty asset files here. So we'll drag both of those in. And now since the animation of the camera movement is happening here, we can do all of like our original visual effects plate basically over top of the original thing here, since that's when we're already comping back into him and the original plate here. So there's no need to do this later, but let's go ahead and tag all of this. So we're going to tag this as input or Rec 709 and another one as another Rec 709. And this is going to be our kind of like explosion of our blocks, which we're going to need to use a time offset for this to get this to be correct. We're going to retime all of this as well. I kind of want the first frame of the explosion to happen on frame 1019. We can have it happen a little bit before. I think 1023 is when he first hits the ground. So if I change this to 1022, should be the first frame of this kind of happening. I need one frame earlier, I think. Yeah, perfect. And all we have to do is we just have to merge this on top of our original shot here. And I can use a transform node after this, of course. Let's just go ahead and scale it down slightly as well. And taking this on our over, let's try this. Let's take this and then multiply this value onto it. So that way we're just kind of getting the cracks here. Let's use multiply first and then use another merge node here. And actually an easy way of doing this instead of us just guesstimating this. Let's set that to 1. If I take this white point here and we select the white point of this kind of like ground explosion, so we do that, it's going to then make this so that way when I multiply this over top of everything, it gets pretty close to the exact color that we need. Now it is creating a bit of a shadow around everything. I think that's just because our actual alpha of this whole thing is a little too large. It's definitely a fine line boundary of what we need this to be. We could do it that way. The other thing we could do is, the reason it's doing that is from this outer edge. The way I would fix it then is if we add in another merge node and then Roto out around that merge node. Let's try that real quick. But that works for at least him hitting the ground. It's funny, I do like those cracks. That works pretty nicely. It's just it's not going to work once the ground starts to explode, which is all good. Then we have our shadow, and we can also merge our shadow in onto the ground as well. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to need to fix this outer edge here, and I don't know the best way to go about doing that. We can maybe control the value of it somehow. It's kind of making everything a little bit darker. That makes everything a little bit brighter. Oh, technically speaking, it's not on the top of this. It's only on the bottom here. So we could use our merge node method and then just make sure that everything up top is... Let's try that. So we're just going to hug this bottom edge here a little bit. And we'll just make that a little bit larger because I know we're going to want it to be. And then we'll pre-multiply that. And that should get rid of that bottom kind of like shadowed edge that we have there. And we're going to be retiming this anyway, so that's not going to be a huge issue. I think we could get away with that. And we're going to want to retime this, of course, to the first hit. Again, we'll probably want this to be off, so we'll set the keyframe there. And then as he's hitting the ground here, I'm going to have it animate in. Probably have it just be a little bit, and then it just goes to full blast there. Before everything else here, let's add in an O-flow. And that's going to allow us to control the speed at which this particular element is going. So I'm going to change it to frame again. And let's see, 1023, we wanted this to be frame 1. 1023. And double checking, yep, next frame is 1024. So, yep, here we set this. Well, actually, we'll set this to 1024 because we know for sure we want this frame to be 1024. So this part right here, we know that on 1024, we want it to be 1024, but I'm also thinking that by 1026, we're going to want this explosion to be a little bit more. So probably, let's go 1028. And by 1030, let's see, maybe we want it to be quite a bit larger, something like that. Trying to have that pop in a little bit faster, but maybe not quite too fast. It's a line at which we want this to be at. Yeah, I like that a lot better. The Roto here, though, got to watch out for us losing any blocks off the sides. Let's remove the first set here. I don't want to clip anything out. Okay, great. And then let's play that back again. Now, we are getting this kind of like weird multiplication that's kind of happening here for where we're losing some of our materials, and that's just some weird blending that we're having. This is partially due to the multiplication that we have going on here. We set the white point to the blocks, and then what we're also going to need to do is we're going to need to set the black point to the cracks in which are on the ground. Now they're already pretty close, so let's do that real quick. Now if we multiply that over top of everything, now instead of using our multiply here, for our actual grade node that we have going on, we'll want the white point that we just selected as our white of our block to be the color of the concrete. So now all we have to do is change our gain value here to the actual blue concrete that we want. I'm probably going to go with a little bit of darker blue. And then our lift will need to be set to a black point that we want it to be set to. And I'm just going to set it to like our shoe here. Yeah, let's do that part of the shoe. And now, if we take this A alpha and then plug that in, this is going to be set up to the color of the concrete that we have here. Pretty good. It's pretty close to what we want. My only concern is, let's see. Firstly, let's get rid of this color correct because we're not using that anymore. And then our second thing is I want the gain here. Let's just adjust this gain slightly. And again, we're having kind of like this circle that's happening. I'm wondering if that's going to be okay. The only other thing that we might want to do is have our shadow dropped in as well. So we'll do the time offset, we'll do the O flow and the transform. Let's copy all of this stuff and then paste this over here. And that's just going to add in those contact shadows. And for this frame here, we're going to need this to animate in. And again, we'll set the keyframe here. And then 1023, kind of like have that turned off a little bit. And then again, completely off on 1022. That's particles of him hitting the ground. I think that's going to feel a lot better in the scene. Now, he is disappearing. His feet are disappearing here. Unfortunately, we don't have like 3D control over these, like this particular explosion effect, which is somewhat unfortunate. The other thing is we could just take another merge node here, and we know that we already have his alpha. So theoretically, we could just, oh, I deleted his mask. We could just take the matte of him. Let's load that into here real quick. All we have to do is tag that as our output, Rec 709. And then if I select this, set that to the red value here, then we say invert, he's going to be sitting on top of our blocks, which maybe that's what we want for this specific asset, and then we could put more assets in front of him. I think that's probably going to be the best. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to put some blocks in front of him now. So let's find another explosion asset that we have real quick. And then I'm going to take the beauty. I'm not sure that we need the shadows because we're not going to be using the ground connecting portion of it. We do actually have some camera shake. Right now, we're not viewing that section of it. The camera shake happens all later. I'm going to do output, Rec 709 here, and we already have this merge node here. We're going to add in an additional merge node below it, and this is going to have our effects work on top. So let's just copy paste our work that we already did, and then this is not going to be on the B, this is going to be on the A of our shot. And then let's adjust our transform here to have everything line up a little bit better for how we want the ground hit to happen. This is going to be in front of our character. So we're going to kind of like have everything line up a little bit more so in front. I might scale everything down. I think I accidentally just screwed up my scale. There we went. Great. And now I can go ahead and just scale everything down. And I just want this to sit in front of our dude, but not in front of his legs. Because essentially we're just trying to create a 3D kind of like effect here on how we want everything to line up. Great, so let's see what this looks like now. So now it's going to sit in front of him, and it also flies behind him as well. Let's see what that all looks like with everything playing back here. We're going to add in some smoke and whatnot as well, coming in a second. Like the impact moment on the ground. Camera shake is something that I always have problems with, I feel like. I'm never super happy with how it turns out. Let's do some dust real quick, and then we'll add in some additional cracks on the side, I think. Yeah, I will be smoothing. It's that transition right here. There is a, let's see, let's add another transform node in here, and I'm going to set the center of it to about right here. So if we change our center to 949 and our Y to be 409, maybe even a little bit higher, I think, we can actually rotate this specifically. So let's see, let's rotate him. Just looks kind of dumb right now. 1 second. We'll figure this out. Actually, wait a second. Let's have him like that, and this transform node here. If he's already rotated to 0 at this point, and then here, a couple frames earlier, he's rotated to the other value that we have, which is, let's do this real quick and then turn off motion blur. Yeah, let's keep motion blur off for this guy. I also think that's potentially part of the issue. And then now if we add in a nice smoke dust wave, so let's find something for that. Let's see, for our assets now, we've got our dust wave. Let's just drag that in here. I'm going to tag this as 709. And let's see, I'm going to use this over top of our merge node, add in a transform, and then I'm going to do the same thing we did earlier with our time offset and our O-flow. I like the speed at which all of that stuff takes place. So I think this will probably get us pretty close to what we need. And then now all I have to do is just place this over top of the area in which we want it. The other thing is we're going to want to change the color of our dust here in a second. For our merge node here, let's go ahead and just change this to a plus. And now just place this over top of our shot. And then maybe even change the scaling slightly. I'm going to change the scaling a little bit. And then also I'm going to change the time offset here. Well, 1021 is probably correct. I'm going to set the white point to the white point of this, the smoke that we have here. And now if I go over to our VFX shot, we want this kind of smokiness to live within our scene a little bit better. I'm probably going to take the gain of this. Let's see what it looks like as blue. I don't know that blue is going to work for us. Might find something like one of these gray patterns here that we can use as like a nice kind of like effect. Just gray. Now if I just add in a little bit of contrast to this. Okay. Our O-flow here I'm going to disable, and then our time offset here, we will set this to 1021. I'm going to use a separate O-flow that is just going to be changing the output speed here, and I want the speed to be much quicker. And we'll maybe even like twice as fast as that. I'm not going to lie. We just want this to be pretty quick. And our time offset here to be even earlier than that. 10, 20, 19. Here with our O-flow, let's change this output speed to be even twice as fast as that. And then let's just adjust our transform slightly here. I'm going to do one more thing here for today. We're running out of time, but him flopping around is not ideal. So what I want to do is let's go to this guy here, and let's use a frame hold. Okay, so I have this frame hold here. I'm thinking we can have this frame hold. Let's see, he's flying up, and then at about 1019, I want him to be rotating here. This is where I'm going to want the frame hold to exist. If I add a merge here, and I add another merge here, and then I add another merge between the merges, I think that's the best way to do this. So we've got this guy, and then all I need to do is between the guys, I need them to be the same kind of like location. But anyways, I need this to be set to 1, need this to be set to 0, and then a frame before that gets set to 1, and this gets set to 0. And ideally is just going to kind of be like animating between the two of these, but I need to figure out when he's rotating, I basically want it to have him not be in that pose. So basically he rotates around like that. So then maybe we set the keyframes one more time for this merge node and this merge node. And then back on 1021, we set that to 1, and we set this to 0. So essentially all we're doing is for these frames right here, then he gets set back to kind of like how he's doing. It's like he's basically just turning to a ball. But that's because what we need is him to be smaller for that rotation period of him flying in, right? So check this out. So but basically this is the dumbed down version that's not animated, like so that way we can kind of see the trajectory at everything's happening. Oh, that feels a lot better. As you can see, he like rotates now when he hits the ground, right before he hits the ground. But other than that, I think this is going to do it, at least for this VFX shot here. But you guys go grab these project files. They'll be up on the Patreon. I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you guys this coming weekend with a brand new live stream. See you guys soon. Bye.